This is your daily reminder. God has not run out of mercy, not for you, not today. Welcome to the New Mercies Podcast. Welcome. Today is Friday, July the 3rd, and we are looking forward to where we're going to be in our reading plan today because it's Friday. And we know if you've been a part of the New Mercies Podcast, what that means is this is the text I will be preaching, Lord willing, on Sunday at church. So we've already looked at this text a couple of times this week, and we're going to look at it once again. We are in the book of Exodus, chapter number 40. We're in a tabernacle series. This will be the final time we read this together, and I'll be preaching it on Sunday. This is where we wrap up the series on the tabernacle. We've learned all we will learn on the tabernacle. So then we are jumping into a new series after this in 2 Peter. It's going to be a lot of fun. But here's what I want to do today. I want to go through and give you just the three kind of highlights of the frame of this text. On Tuesday, we talked about this text, but we talked about it a little bit differently about how Moses did all the work, and we need to highlight some of that. What I want to do today, I got my little notebook here, my little note here, about what I want to point out today, and I want to read one verse to us today, and that one verse is, I'll be honest with you, this is the verse I'm going to be pressing in on Sunday. So I'm giving you like the hook for the sermon because I know we have got a lot of people traveling for Independence Day, for the big American holiday of the 250th celebration in America. So I know we got a lot of people on vacation and traveling. So I'm just going to go ahead and give you the hook right now. But what we're doing, so the first 15 verses of Exodus 40 give us instructions for the consecration of all the things, right? So the items are built, and now it's time to consecrate them, to erect, to build up, set up the tent, the tabernacle, and it's going to be consecrated. So that's what we see in the first 15 verses. Then verses 16 down through verse 33, they carry out the consecration. They actually carry out all the things that are prescribed. They follow the Lord's command. That's what happens. And it dates this. It's important to know that all this says in verse number 17. I'm actually going to read two verses to us today. This first one I want to read for a very specific reason. Listen to verse number 17. In the first month, in the second year, on the first day of the month, the tabernacle was erected. Now, again, he says in the first verse, he gives that date, and then verse 17, that's the day it happened. Now, I want to just explain something. This is 1 year after their exodus, right? After the first Passover and the exodus from Egypt. Now, we talked about that on Tuesday. What we did not talk about is they have been at Mount Sinai for 9 months. 9 months. There's a reason things are dated, okay? There's a very specific reason for it. 9 months. I want you to think about what all you can accomplish in 9 months. I'll tell you this. These furnishings, the tent, the fabrics, the weaving, the poles, the ironwork, the gold work, the bronze work, the wood work, all of this happened in 9 months. 9 months. I'll be honest, there's some incredible detail in all of this. And yet it took them 9 months to build it. That's crazy fast, in my opinion. Maybe to you, you're like, oh, I could have done it in 6. I don't know that that's necessarily a true thing, but they also didn't have power tools. There were no battery-operated saws or drills or any of that. There was no electricity. They just did the work. They melted things down. They used fire. They used mold. They molded things out to build each of these pieces, all handcrafted into these designs. Unbelievable amount of work in 9 months. Whatever you think listen, set your mind to something and go after it for 9 months and see just what the Lord will do with it. I think it is important and valuable and really neat to think they had this date in mind. You know they did. It'll be 1 year since we left slavery, since we were freed from our slavery. It'll be 1 year in about 9 months. Let's see if we can get it done by the 1 year anniversary. They set their minds to it. They did it. That's incredible and awesome. So the first 15 verses, how to consecrate all of the pieces. Verses 16 down through 33, the actual carrying out of all that consecration. 9 months. 9 months they built every single piece that we just talked about. That shocks me. Maybe it doesn't shock you. It shocks me. The verse I want to read today, so verses then 34 through 38, is God, his seal on the tabernacle. Okay, so you got the consecration of it all, how to do it, instructions for it. Then you've got the actual consecration of it that carried it out. And then you've got God's seal over the tabernacle, his seal on "This is my place." I want to read one verse to you, though. It is found in verse number 35. "And Moses was not able to enter the tent of meeting because the cloud settled on it, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle." This is Moses, the man who was in charge of putting the whole thing together, the man who was up on the mountain and the presence of God was around him, the man who spoke to God directly, the man who was holding the tablets as God carved with his finger on those tablets, the one who said, "God, show me your glory." And he says, "Just turn your face because you can't see my face, or I'll go by you and you'll see my back. You won't see my face because you just can't handle it." This is this guy, Moses. Moses, as close to the Lord as anyone in history, saw more of the Lord than anyone else ever has, could not, I want to read it again, he was not able to enter the tent of meeting because God's presence was there. That's how powerful God's presence is. I'm so passionate about this very thought. We've grossly underestimated the power of the presence of God. Some of us say, "Oh, we yearn for his presence," but we don't live like it. Some of us say, we're desperate for the presence of God in a worship service. No, we're not. We're not living that way. We're not living like we're actually want his presence. His presence is fear. It brings fear in us. Moses couldn't even go in because the presence of God was there. That's how powerful the presence of God is. So when we say, I remember one time, I was at a youth conference thing. I was a teenager, and I was there. My brother was there, in fact, and our dad was on the trip. I remember we had this great worship service there's thousands of students in this room, and just great worship service. Everybody's hands lifted, everybody's singing praise, enjoying it, all that kind of stuff. And then we exit out of the stadium that we were in, and we were on our way to our hotel room. And I remember we get into a couple of hotel rooms. We're in there, and we're talking. All the guys are in there talking, and my brother and I'm telling jokes and being funny and being silly and being ridiculous. And I remember my dad telling me later that night, he said, "Boys, I need to tell you something." I didn't even know my brother was even in the room until I told this story a year ago or something. And my brother said, "I remember that night. I remember it." Our dad said to us, "Boys, you cannot tell me you were in the presence of God and then went out and acted like a fool. That you weren't in the presence of God. You had an emotional experience, but the presence of God wasn't there because you had no holy living after that. You went straight from this great moment of, all this praise, all this worship, into telling a bunch of jokes and being dumb." And it checked my spirit from then on. Like I'm telling you, I'm so, I don't want to say skeptical for people that say they had this great, incredible worship experience and then they're lying to my face, or they're doing something, they're cutting down somebody, they're tearing somebody down, they're not building them up, they're not living with the fruit of the Spirit coming out of their life, they're not kind, they're not gentle, they're not patient, they're not, let me tell you something. If you are not producing the fruit of the Spirit, you weren't in the presence of God. You weren't. I'm just going to go ahead and say it, because the presence of God changes everything. The presence of God changed the fact that Moses couldn't even go in anymore. He couldn't go in anymore because the presence of God was there. I want you to think about this today. I hope and pray that you are yearning for the presence of God. And I hope more than just you yearning for it, that you are living for it, that you are living toward it, that you are aligning your life to look like you are taking the presence of God everywhere you go. Because now, as a New Testament believer, we have the presence of God within us. I have the Holy Spirit of God within me who is going out. How am I showing that? How am I revealing that to people? The presence of God is powerful, and we as believers have the presence of God. I want to encourage you in Exodus 40 today. Read the scripture, read verse 35 a couple of times. Moses, the guy, the man who put it all together, could not even go in because the presence of God was there. That's how powerful and how, dare I say, dangerous the presence of God really is. I hope and pray you let Exodus 40 soak into your life today and go and live like you're yearning for the presence of God.